two people who have a remarkable track record of using AI to enable real estate. Really, AI is reshaping some steps of our customer journey, in particular, agents' journey in property management and consumers' journey in planning, buying, building, or owning their homes. So today, we're going to hear a discussion between 2025 Proptech Leader of the Year and Kolmeo CEO Scott Bateman with Milk Chocolate GM of Products, Hedy Ivanovski. Thank you very much for joining us on stage today.
Just one more time. I don't know.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you
morning.
for joining me.
Good to be with you.
All right, so we don't have long, so we'll dive straight in.
Sure.
So a big focus for the past 18 months has been on operational efficiency, but the true competitive advantage of AI won't come from these efficiency gains. It will come from strategic transformation. How are you thinking about that shift from optimizing existing systems to exploring new ways of working?
Good morning. So good morning, everybody. It's a great question. I think one of the frameworks that I was introduced to a long time ago, pre-AI, that I think is especially helpful in this time is this idea of explore, experiment, and exploit. And for us, what that means is investing enough time and focus in sort of scanning. So we see what's going on and what the technology can do, what's going on in an industry itself, what's going on in terms of consumer behaviour or expectations. Because in large part, what we see is when you pick on one thread, there's a whole bunch of subsequent things that happen. When we've stood back and looked at where we think the technology is and where it can go, we are ultimately concluding really significant cost reductions in real estate over the next 2 years. The concern is that if you look at every industry where there aren't barriers to entry or there isn't some proprietary technology, anytime costs fall, revenue falls proportionally. So our focus is not just in how do we help businesses save. Increasingly, we're pivoting to how do we help you serve more people, how do we help you play in different markets, and then how do we help you drive top-line revenue? Because again, our concern is cost is foregone, it'll definitely go down, AI is very powerful, but everyone will have access to that, which means ultimately you're still profitable, but the revenue's gone, the valuation's gone, and we think that's a far bigger problem that's coming over the next 2 years.
And so do you think there is a company or an industry that is navigating this well? And what's the sort of key takeaway from their approach?
So you and I, when we spoke earlier, I shared with you the company that inspired me with Kolmeo, which was Ant Group. I've got a different case study for you though, which I think is interesting because of how unsexy it will seem at first, and that is Coles. And I'm not sure how many of you have seen what Coles is doing, particularly with AI, but it's really remarkable. The reason I'm so impressed is that they're not just sort of falling prey to the whole everything needs generative AI. They're looking at it from an experiential point of view, and they're building some incredibly sophisticated approaches to how they just build a better business. The data I saw was 100 billion predictions a day being made out of 2,000 separate data sources. And it is everything from what do we stock and on what shelf and how do we get it to make more money, through to customer-enabled AI agents, and then some of the really simple stuff that most of you may or may not notice, which is around computer vision. So at the checkout, when you go to put your food on the scale, there's a camera and it works out that it is actually a Lebanese cucumber, not a traditional cucumber. So I think it's the genius of a business standing back and saying, how do we do things that drive down cost? How do we help us serve more people? How do we help us increase revenue without just reaching for the one same tool that everyone keeps reaching for, which is an LLM, and saying, well, actually, there's a million ways we can solve it. Let's bring the right tool to the right problem.
Can we talk about Ant as well?
Yeah, well, how many of you are familiar with Ant Group? Not many. Okay, I wasn't either. I got introduced to it by a professor because I was sort of fanboying over Amazon back in 2018. And to put this in perspective, so Ant started off as Alipay, so the Chinese equivalent of PayPal. They have a staff to customer ratio of 1 employee to every 80,000 customers. They're in financial services. I used to work for Westpac. In Westpac, that ratio is 1 to 50. So they're 1,600 times more efficient than a Westpac. They did this because they wanted to bank the rural Chinese. You couldn't build a branch network and still do so profitably. So they relied on incredibly simplistic at the time AI models that are now unbelievably sophisticated. It is just pervasive through Chinese society. More money flows through Ant than the EU, like it's an extraordinary sum of money. You can apply for a loan, have it approved and funded in minutes because they track all the data on just how you go about your life. They were looking at people looking for pet insurance. The model spins out a variety of different mixes of policies and cover, puts them into a battle royale to work out which is the most effective. When it goes to make a claim, you don't want a human serving them, so you hold your phone up and again, computer vision recognises the unique nose print of your dog and it uses that to determine that you'll be paid. So it's a frightening way of sort of thinking about how you can take very simple use cases and become very broad. And I think maybe 2 weeks ago, they've just released Ling 1T, which is their own 1 trillion parameter LLM. So they're just pushing at a frightening pace. And I think more exciting than what I see in a lot of the Western companies.
For sure. All right. So the conversation around AI at work is obviously inescapable.
Yep.
We've seen everything from the default to AI mandate at Open Door to the Walmart CEO coming out and saying literally every job will be impacted by AI.
Yep.
So on one hand, it's being heralded as the solution to all things. And then on the other hand, to Tim's point, we have this sort of passable work slop that's actually a tax on productivity.
Yep.
How are you thinking about that paradox?
I think the key thing is that word, that it is a paradox. My take anyway, and it's an opinion of one, the problem is that both of these things are true simultaneously. It is both the most important, the most consequential change, I would argue, in human history when you look at where it will go next. It is also producing some frighteningly horrific outcomes as we get to that ultimate end goal. If you look back through history and look at similar transformative technologies, with the benefit of the arc of history, they look like they were really sophisticated and consequential and embraced and so on really quickly. Electricity, for 20 years after it was invented, 3% of American businesses were actually using it to manufacture. And then it took nearly 40 years before we learned how to build factories that leveraged what it could do. The motor vehicle, you'd see images of people with their cars being towed by horses. And you'd argue, like this thing we all know to be transformative, they'd say, well, hang on a second, all I see is people being hurt, the cars break down, there's no such thing as a gas network, so they can't drive very far. With the benefit of history, we realise how transformative these things will be. In the moment, what we can often get caught up in is what they don't do well. So I think we've got to hedge our bets, both build really tight governance and process, because a lot of what they do still is flawed, but make no mistake, these things are being solved at a rapid rate. And with the benefit of the next few years, I don't think most of the issues that we see today will still be issues.
All right, so prediction time then.
Okay.
What do you think the future of work looks like over the next 12 to 18 months? And what are the sort of opportunities and risks?
I think the comment I made the other day to a group of real estate people is we are living in both the single best moment in time and the single worst, because we are the group that's having to work out how to navigate not just world pre-AI and world post, but also to form opinions and then have those opinions reshaped as it goes from being clunky and not working well to working, really well. I think Tim just mentioned the example of coding, where we said, it can code for up to 2 hours as well as a human for up to 2 hours, and it would double every 7 months, and we said every 4. The latest frontier models have just clocked 30 hours. So we're seeing 2029 expectations happening right now. This is the dilemma. I think we've all just got to wrestle with this very murky, unknown space. I would say be sceptical and optimistic at the same time when someone says, here's how we want to do this thing. But the point I'll always keep coming back to, AI is the worst way to solve many problems. It is the best way to solve some, it's the worst way to solve many. And I'd always sort of see it as the final way to solve a thing, not the first. It's not an expression, if all you have is a hammer, everything becomes a nail.
Yeah.
I think we're at risk of it being a bit like that.
Yeah, a model is not always the solution.
So true, so true.
Okay, some self-reflection as our Proptech Leader of the Year.
Okay.
What has been your biggest unlearning during this time of change, and what's the takeaway for everyone here?
I think I made the mistake early and often, and probably keep making it, of assuming that because something is a barrier or an impediment or a constraint now, that we can rely on it being so in X period of time. The thing I have had to conclude is that we have got to be able to respond and change our stance on some of this really quickly. I would sort of go into the next sort of while with the assumption that everything we are saying can't be solved will be solved, because each time we've said something won't get solved, it's got solved. And that's incredibly complicated because you're trying to build multi-year plans in some cases for businesses. And I've had to go back and say, well, actually, my natural bent is towards strategy and long-term planning. You just have to live in this messy world of experimentation, mindful that you'll probably get lots and lots and lots wrong while you work out where to go next.
And actually on that sort of high-speed experimentation, are you structuring your teams differently to allow for that?
Yeah, we're starting to. I think we're pretty early into this as we start to embed better frameworks and so on for doing so. A lot of the work we do is following that explore, experiment, exploit process where we'll say across certain sort of key disciplines, is there a part of the technology that we think we need to know more about? Is there a specific LLM that's come out and we're seeing it do something that we think is really compelling or interesting? Is there some behavioural change we think we should pick up on? Is there some business model innovation we think we should pick up on? And we use that to drive the hypotheses that we then start to experiment with. So some things are an experiment with the technology. Some of it is just pure business model stuff because we're trying to figure out like where is the opportunity in all of this. The thing we'll keep coming back to is that old adage of, fail fast, fail forward. We don't get fixated on any one hypothesis. We try and be really clear about what we expect from a test before we do it, and we let the data tell us where to go next. So I think it's just lots of little bits of figuring out, no one kind of, golden rule.
It's a good approach.
We'll see.
I think we have time. I wanted to leave time to see if there was anyone that had a question for Scott in the room.
I love that dog noses are now structured.
Isn't it clever? It's frightening. I mean, when you see what they do, so they're really, some of it is very nice for the customer, like that. Some of it not so much, but just as clever. So they'll do things like if you run a small business, the volume of trade that you put through your business unlocks higher levels of health insurance for your family. So you could have two very different views about whether that's a good or bad thing. But as your business gets better and does well, you are automatically unlocking more access to more and more things because of how much lives on that platform. So again, two very different things from the same business. And I've got to be clear, I'm not ethically advocating for what they're doing. But it's amazing when you stand back and just think about the problems that you might be able to solve and then how you could solve it. I think that the nose thing is a really interesting one. Yeah.
All right. I think that was our quick fire chat.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.